Greetings. My name is Jody Cripps. This is my name sign. I'm from Clemson University, located in South Carolina. I'm here to speak with Jill Taney. She is from Martha's Vineyard Island. We're here as part of a collaborative effort with Martha's Vineyard TV and Martha's Vineyard Signs Then and Now. And as a part of that collaboration, I'm very excited to be here to ask questions about her experience growing up here on the island. Were you born here on Martha's Vineyard?
Yes, I've always lived on Martha's Vineyard. As far as I know, I was the first deaf person born on the island, and I was born at Oak Bluffs. And
what about deafness?
well, I'm sure many people know that deaf and hearing people lived in community here, communicating in sign language, primarily in Chilmark. But by the late 1900s, the population of deaf people had essentially disappeared. So until I was born here, there weren't any other deaf residents. So that's what I understand happened.
So you were born deaf, correct?
Yes, but my parents and family didn't realize until I was 18 months old.
What was it like growing up here on Martha's Vineyard?
Martha's Vineyard was exactly the same. Nothing has changed. I have many friends here, and they know me and all communicate great with me. My family is the same way. You know, I have more hearing friends than deaf friends, and I would like to have deaf friends, but my friends accept me for who I am. They don't discriminate or single me out or anything.
Well, that's good. So growing up here, what was your favorite thing to do here on the island?
Oh, growing up, I loved to play. You know, it was the 1970s and kids had so much fun outdoors. We rode bikes, played games of hide and seek in the dark. That was my favorite thing to do, was to play outside until nighttime. And nowadays, you know, too many people will just play video games.
Oh, it's a new generation.
Yeah, until their eyes fall out.
Yeah, it's a new day.
Right. Like, come on, get outside, get some fresh air. But growing up, you know, I was excited and happy to be outdoors in the dirt and learning from the bugs and the worms and that kind of thing. And that's how I learned, was through experience about science and adventure, insects and trees, even listening to birds chirping. I listened to airplanes flying overhead, that kind of thing.
Gosh, that's good advice.
I know. I mean, sorry to say.
Such good advice. Where and when did you learn to sign?
So I learned here. My school was in Tisbury, and my grandmother, I don't know exactly how she did it. I guess she called around to Boston to find an interpreter. And this woman came to us when I was just 18 months old and taught me and my family, my teachers at Tisbury and some of the community, to sign so that they could better communicate with me. And my grandmother really made sure that everyone learned through this woman. Her name was Betsy. I don't remember her last name, though I know she lived in Boston. I'm not sure if she's still there, but she would come before school started, you know, preschool or nursery school in the summertime, and teach me to sign.
So you learned to sign some signs from her.
Right, that's how I learned to sign. And I learned PSE or pigeon sign.
Yeah, a contact language, a hybrid.
Right, not formal ASL. And there are differences between PSE and ASL. But I learned that because my grandmother, she was a teacher herself. So she was, sorry, Mom, to describe her this way, very prim and proper, very peculiar and particular. So I do thank her for that. I love her to death, and I am grateful for her.
So growing up here, did you know that Martha's Vineyard had a history related to sign language?
No, I had no idea until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, my mom was telling me about this woman named Lynn who gave a talk, and my old interpreter Tony was also telling me, and I was stunned. When I was going to school or in college, I wasn't interested in the history, so I just dismissed a lot of it.
Where did you go to college?
I went to the National Technical Institute for the Deaf in Rochester, New York. And I know that makes people think that I'm rich, but I'm not, because people think Martha's Vineyard's a wealthy island, and since I'm from here that I must be rich, but that's just not true. So anyway, when people would ask me about the deaf community on Martha's Vineyard, I didn't know what to say, so I just didn't go any further.
So that's where you began to sign, the Rochester Institute of Technology.
Right. There are 2 campuses next to each other that are blended.
They're on the same campus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we had class together, etc. And I do remember a friend asking me about the Martha's Vineyard deaf community, but I didn't have any knowledge or know what to say about it. So it wasn't until I moved back here that I began to learn the history, and my parents confirmed it. And I was surprised and thrilled, like, wow, thank God I'm not the only one, And there were so many here before me, generations. And I've been asked about what the relationships were like then, and unfortunately the only people who could answer that were my grandparents. And, they're no longer here. So I just don't know.
Did you feel inspired knowing that there were deaf people, so many of them on the island?
Absolutely. I want more deaf people to come.
More to come.
Right. Why not?
Maybe I'll move here.
Well, you better ask your wife.
Oh, for sure. I'll ask her. Yep. So what do you do now?
I work at the Edgartown School in the cafeteria, and I have an awesome supervisor. She is learning sign language, and actually she knows some from when we grew up together in school. She learned from my grandmother. So she knows the alphabet and a few other signs, and sad to say, she knows more than my brother does. Sorry. And also I teach sign language classes for those who want to learn to communicate with me or other deaf people that they meet.
Where do you teach?
Yes, so I teach at the American Legion. I also do some one-on-one private lessons, and I also teach at an after-school club for 2nd and 3rd graders who want to learn sign language. And they are just so motivated to learn. They're at, it's just the perfect age.
Gosh, that's wonderful. It's such a nice fit with what you do here at the school. Right. And I like to help them learn to communicate better, because you never know if a hearing kid is going to run into a deaf kid somewhere, and rather than being unsure of what to do, they can be, more comfortable with communicating. I also teach EMTs over at Chilmark. A couple times a year, once or twice a year. Right. I teach them how to communicate if something happens, like if there's a traffic accident or a drowning or someone has hives or whatever, some kind of a medical emergency, to help them know how to communicate better. Gosh, that's cool. That's neat.
Right, to communicate better with people. And I tell them, deaf tourists come here during the summers.
Lots of tourists, yes.
Yeah, and I want you to be ready and prepared. So they are eager to learn, and I help them mostly with the alphabet and being able to introduce themselves. My name is, etc. But I also encourage them to use body language and gestures if they don't know the sign. For example, if a paramedic is asking someone, where is the brake on your body? Then they can indicate on their own body, like showing or pointing to their arm or shoulder with their eyebrows up in a question. You don't have to be scared to come up with gestures. Deaf people will understand what you're saying.
You're so right. I agree with you.
Right. So I tell them, just be yourself, relax when you encounter a deaf patient and you forget all that you learned. Just come up with a sign or a gesture. Use your natural body language to create understanding.
I think we need to make more videos to teach sign language to them, to get them more involved.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
What do you see in terms of the future for sign language here on Martha's Vineyard?
Well, in hospitals and healthcare, I want to see more medical interpreters for people who maybe either can't speak or can't hear, or, elderly people who are mute, just because better communication access is important. I want them to sign and have sign language. So, for example, I don't want to have to rely on my spouse or my parents to come in and tell me what is said. I also want medical professionals to feel more comfortable speaking with me through interpreters, because interpreters make things more clear and they know medical terms that can help me to understand my own care. So using medical interpreters who know the terminology. I also want doctors and nurses at clinics to use a text system, because the video phone connection is not always the best. It sometimes freezes and isn't working well.
You mean VRI? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean my video phone that I use to call and make appointments.
Yes, sometimes, yes, I understand.
But I do know that a lot of people do have complaints with VRI. That's true. And I've actually never used VRI myself before. I don't think they even have that here. I know they use it in Boston though. But what I want is for doctors and nurses to be familiar and comfortable with using interpreters. That's all. Just medical interpreters who know the medical setting.
I'm wondering, do you want nurses and doctors to know some basic signs in ASL?
Yes, I do. But if they can't afford to learn, or they're too busy, or have a conflict or something, then they can hire an interpreter. And it would also be great to have more than one interpreter to do it all, like having interpreters to specialize for the ER, or one for doctor's visits, one for like labor and delivery, etc. So different interpreters for each department of medicine.
Well, I understand.
And an interpreter for after hours overnight.
Overnight, correct.
Right, that sort of thing. That's all I want. That would be my ideal scenario, but it is hard.
There are many deaf people throughout America, not only Martha's Vineyard here, but are really frustrated with the hospital system regarding interpreters. So I agree with you. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences, your feelings, your thoughts, and the future, the vision for Martha's Vineyard. Hopefully we can influence more people on the island to learn to sign.
Yes, I truly want all people to sign and communicate better, regardless of their motivation or reason behind it. I just think if sign language was everyone's second language, just like people learn to speak English or Spanish or whatever, so that they feel more comfortable and natural with it.
I agree.
Yeah, like not freak out when they see signing or meet a deaf person. That does bother me a little, but such is life.
I understand. Thank you so much for getting involved and chatting with me.
Thank you for inviting me on the program. I've enjoyed it.
I want to thank Jill. It's been a great honor to have her join us to talk about and interview and respond to our questions. I hope you enjoyed the evening.
The vision of MV Signs Then and Now project is twofold: to spread awareness of Martha's Vineyard's almost 300-year-old sign language legacy, and to provide hearing vineyarders tools to develop a shared signed language using basic American Sign Language signs and fingerspelling to bridge the various communication gaps that often separate hearing and hard of hearing family members and friends, as well as those with voice problems or developmental challenges, and simultaneously eliminate feelings of isolation and stigma. It also provides similar communication tools to business people, health and wellness professionals, and caregivers, so as to better accommodate and welcome our year-round deaf and ASL signing visitors and tourists.